Hello, my name is Erica Metcalf, and today I'll be taking you through my very own professional development journey I experienced throughout our course, EDSE 501, First Nation, Métis, Inuit Perspectives in Mathematics and Science Education. As I go through each of these slides, you will notice significant quotes I have obtained throughout our readings and lectures this week. Each of these quotes have helped shape my journey as I began to make sense of what incorporating Indigenous perspectives in math and science can look like in my own teaching practices. Little Bear said, "In contrast to Aboriginal value systems, one can summarize the value systems of Western Europeans as being linear and singular, static and objective." As a part of our pre-reading assignment, we were asked to read Little Bear's article, Jagged Worldviews Colliding, and although I'm disappointed in myself for being unaware, this was the first time I've encountered any sort of information that has indicated to me exactly what Western European science is. I guess I've always known what it was because it is the science that I have been taught throughout my career as a student, but also trained to teach as a public school teacher. However, this type of science has never been labeled to me as anything other than quote-unquote science. This revelation was a great starting point for me as I began to unpack the implications of how learning and teaching Western European science can affect my classroom. How can I as an educator shift the linear, static, and objective values of the Western European systems so that it can become more cyclical, dynamic, and objective? The Eurocentric meaning of to learn becomes coming to know in most Indigenous contexts, a meaning that signifies a personal, participatory, holistic journey toward gaining wisdom in action. Said by Aikenhead. After I began to understand what the Eurocentric ways of mathematics and science were, I was then able to understand how these systems differ from Indigenous values and perspectives of science and mathematics. We can see through this quote that the Indigenous perspective contrasts the Eurocentric methods as they encourage a more holistic approach to gaining wisdom. Our idea of learning has a deeper meaning in Indigenous context because it considers one's journey as they come to know about the world around them. It is this very notion that made me consider what learning looks like in my classroom. Students in my class aren't just learning information. They are experiencing a journey that goes much deeper than facts. They are participating in a journey that is going to help them evolve and grow holistically. In Sternberg et al.'s article, they said, "By honoring multiple perspectives of mathematical thinking and knowing, we can come to know mathematics and ourselves in a different way." How can I honor different ways of knowing in my classroom? I was asked to consider in my first exit slip how the word honoring differs from words like incorporating or integrating. What I think the biggest difference between these words is that honoring multiple perspectives includes a level of respect that incorporation does not. Integrating and incorporating are words that sound so systematic and lack a sense of connectedness. It is through respect that positive relationships can be built. We incorporate ideologies all the time in our classrooms, but are we truly honoring other ways of knowing in a way that shows mutual respect for others? I think it's through the interconnectedness promoted through honoring different ways of thinking and knowing that we can reflect on who we are as educators and how this can ultimately affect the learning environment we create for our students so that they too can honor other ways of thinking. Bang and Marin said in their article that science learning tends to structure learning in ways that restrict experienced and possible forms of agency, identities, and relations. Throughout the course, we spent quite a bit of time discussing the program of studies at our tables. As groups, we began to unpack how Indigenous perspectives can fit in with the program of studies and shared ways we could unsettle the settled curriculum, as referred to by Bang and Marin. This quote from their article truly allowed me to see why unsettling the program of studies is so important for us to do as educators, because it may grant our students the opportunity to take action on what they learn so that it may be more impactful rather than simply memorizing content. Educators can begin to ask questions about what they are teaching, and students can also begin to ask questions about what they are learning and how. We have the ability to change the conventional, quote-unquote, culture of school science into a culture that is more subjective. As Mijung articulated during one of our lectures, science responds to objectivity while culture includes subjectivity. Combining these two ideas into one is what I believe to be the best way of unsettling what we have been taught, so that we may be more open to other ways of knowing and can see what we learn or what our students learn through a different lens. Indigenous education recognizes diversity but works to enhance it by recognizing the giftedness that all of us bring to the tables as learners and as teachers. When I think about our roles as educators of today's children and youth, it is this very quote from Mark's lecture that, to me, is the essence of what our teaching should be. All of our students have so much to offer, and every single one of them bring forth a variety of gifts and ideas. Inviting these gifts into our classroom environments allows not only our students to grow, but for us as teachers to grow alongside them. In one of her articles, Lynn Weltsey said it best. Awareness of the differences students bring to school is an important step. The next step would be to recognize that these differences are not deficiencies, but funds of knowledge that can be utilized in teaching in order for students to meet expectations. I think this idea ties in nicely with what Mark shared with us because it encourages teachers to change our frame of mind so that we can honor what makes our students unique, and so that we may begin to make learning or coming to know more meaningful for each and every one. I can't wait to see what my next group of kids has to offer, and I'm so excited to get to know their own special gifts and talents. That way I can ensure that I build special relationships with each and every one of them. The small rock that falls into that water has huge numbers of ripples. This statement Florence left with us on our third day together was so impactful and truly resonated with me. When I think about my teaching practices, I think about how powerful it is that we have this ability to influence all of the students we teach. Taking this into consideration, I am more aware of how important it is for me to consider the values I am instilling or incorporating in my classroom. As their teachers, we have the ability to give life to our students if we are allowing their very special gifts to flourish. Although it may seem small now, something as little as shifting my teaching practice to include Indigenous perspectives and values will cause a ripple effect, having a lasting impact on my students as they grow into lifelong learners. The most successful learning environments actively engages students intellectually, physically, emotionally, and sometimes spiritually, said by Aikenhead and Sutherland. To me, the essence of this very quote is the reason why incorporating FNMI perspectives into my teaching is so valuable, because it will help foster a positive learning community within my classroom. My goal is to create an environment where all students feel intellectually, physically, emotionally, and spiritually engaged and respected, and that their values can be honored from a holistic approach. It is clear that such an environment is beneficial to students, as it does a great job at developing one's sense of belonging. I thought a lot about how I approach STEM in my classroom after Mi-Jung's lecture. I do use steam bins, and before I thought that was enough. Oh, was I wrong. My approach to STEM in my classroom was definitely not actively engaging my students holistically, but rather engage them passively without any sense of motivation other than play. What can we do to make our communities better and stronger? Finally, this question posed by Tan et al. Is something I will be asking myself as I move into a new school year after experiencing this course. As I mentioned above, my approach to STEM education was not one that honored my students successfully by engaging them at a deeper level. Now I can see that there's so much more to STEM or STEAM education that can be incorporated and used with my future students to help build their sense of agency and consider issues and concerns outside of our own classroom environment. They can assess the world around them and begin to consider how they can help others or the land outside of the classroom, promoting a sense of connectedness to the world around them. Now that I am aware of Indigenous perspectives and values in mathematics and science, I am motivated to take these values into my classroom so that I may create new norms with my students that will honor each of their own special talents and create positive relationships that can enhance their connection with the land, their peers, and with myself. I hope you enjoyed my journey of this course as much as I have. Despite experiencing a slew of emotions, I have to say that I am extremely excited to take all that I have obtained I not only implement it into what I am already doing in my classroom, but to also share with current administrators, colleagues, and additional stakeholders, as well as those I will encounter in my future. Thank you.